right, welcome back once again, everybody. I'm Don Seifrit. It's the Dr. Treefruit and Don podcast. It is Friday, March 29th, where we're recording this, but this probably won't get released until Monday, which would be the 1st. Today I'm here with Dr. Kari Peter. Say hi, Kari.
Hello.
And Dr. Greg Krawczyk for the first time this year. Say hi, Greg.
Good morning, everyone. Or
Cool.
hello,
Yeah. Um,
when you're listening.
so I think so we're recording two in a week. Kari, I know, said she's got a lot going on next week, so we wanted to get one out. But also she wanted to address some of the stuff she said earlier this week, so I'll let her go.
Yeah, so when we recorded this on Monday and I looked at the NUA forecast, nothing was showing up. And like the rain forecast was a little iffy. Then in a span of, I think, like 36 hours, that all changed. And there was a scab infection event, definitely a scab infection event for Wednesday and Thursday. And that would have been the March 27th and 28th. And as I'm looking at the NUA forecast right now this is for the Biglerville area. It's basically showing scab infection event from March 27th through April 2nd. So even though it's sunny and dry right now, I think there may be rain coming in later this evening. So my bad. But I did emphasize something during that podcast about keeping an eye on your own location and as far as spraying when you have to. And, I think everyone a lot of people, especially for, our veteran listeners, they're well-oiled machines when it comes to this. So my misstep, rusty getting started again at the beginning of the season. But I will say this is that whatever you had on your trees going into those scab infection events this week, you were fine. And the reason why I know you were fine is that the apple scab spores, the mature apple scab spores that are coming from those overwintering leaves, this is timed with green tip. This is how Mother Nature has evolved, is that when the apple trees break dormancy, they're showing green tissue. Scab has evolved to coincide with the first mature spores being available at that time. Now, all the mature spores from those overwintering leaves, they aren't all released at once and they aren't all matured at once. So they gradually trickle out. They peak at bloom and maybe a little bit at the start of petal fall. Then it drastically drops off and the primary scab infection period is pretty much over. So as far as right now, we have like the apple scab spores are trickling out. Also, the disease conditions aren't extreme. They're on the chillier side. It takes a lot more wetness hours. We definitely have achieved those wetness hours, but I consider this low disease pressure primarily due to the fact there just aren't a lot of spores out there that are available. So if you've had copper on your trees, that should have done the job for anything that's out there. If you had mancozeb, fantastic. Sulfur, fantastic. Now going into the weekend, I hope folks are getting out there now, at least between late yesterday, today. I'm not quite sure when the rain is going to be starting, but you definitely want to have something on your trees going into this, as I'm seeing this like 4-day, 5-day combined infection event. At this time, we're definitely from green tip to about half-inch green, and some of those other varieties, I'm looking at you, pink lady, are at tight cluster or very early tight cluster. So at this time, you don't need to bring out the heavy-duty expensive chemicals right now. You can still get away with sulfur at like 8 to 10 pounds. That will do a great job. You can do mancozeb, preferably a rain-fast mancozeb like Manzate Pro Stick or Roper Rain Shield or Dithane Rain Shield. Anything that is rain-fast mancozeb at 3 pounds to the acre. You could tank mix that with Captan at about 2.5 pounds. That will give you even more of an oomph for controlling. I know some people who may tank mix mancozeb and sulfur together. Whatever you know your scab pressure at your location. So as far as judging and juggling what you feel, you need to be putting on. So if you've had bad scab in the years, don't skimp. Definitely put something on out there. For the organic growers who may not have scab-resistant varieties, potassium bicarbonate at 3 pounds to the acre or sulfur at 8 to 10 pounds to the acre right now would do just fine as well. Now, If you don't have a rain fast mancozeb, you can make it rain fast by adding a spreader sticker at about 4 fluid ounces. 4 fluid ounces per 100 gallons. And the reason why I've advocated these rain fast mancozebs for several years now is that they do work. Even though they aren't your traditional, your typical, I should say, chemicals that are able to penetrate the leaf tissue, which are really rain fast. That's like your FRAC 3, 7, 9, 11, etc. Mancozeb's a broad spectrum fungicide. It's going to stay on top of the leaf, but when it's rain fast, it sticks a little longer. It's not washed off as easy when you've got rain events. And since we sort of have as I'm looking from, March 29th and through April 2nd here on NUA, as of right now, on the morning of March 29th, seeing this, 4 or 5 day scab infection event coming, that will pay off, that rain fast mancozeb. Now, as far as sort of shifting into tight cluster is the time, if you were attended this winter meetings, this is the time for powdery mildew control. So last year was a bad powdery mildew year. So powdery mildew, why was it a bad powdery mildew year? It's because there were a lot of dry days in between our wetting events. And so powdery mildew likes dry weather. It doesn't like leaf wetness. So when it's not raining and there's leaf wetness and it's dry, that's when powdery mildew is at its happiest. And so I know there's a lot of inoculum out there, and there's probably a lot of newly established inoculum from last year. And it is very difficult to control powdery mildew culturally. In other words, removing the pathogen source, because this hides out in the buds. It's not feasible to do that. So consequently, there could be a pretty good spore load out there. So even though we're heading into a wet period, this isn't powdery mildew weather, but right after it, we could be in a dry stretch, which would be very conducive for powdery mildew. So what should you be thinking about for powdery mildew control at tight cluster? For those tight cluster, or for those powdery mildew susceptible varieties. And I know Pink Lady is one of them. And that is probably the one that's probably most at risk right now, because that is the one that's moving. That's the one of the varieties I know that's moving pretty far along. And that's just because I have it as one of my research blocks. So you want to be thinking of strong powdery mildew materials. What are they? Sulfur. It's cheap. I would use 8 to 10 pounds per acre of sulfur. It works. If you need something a bit stronger than that, you've got Sevia. You have Inspire Super. You've got Procura Trionic. You also have Torino. You have Gatton, which is one that I'm not as familiar with, but I will be test driving it this year. You've got Top Guard and Rhyme, and also for the organic folks, you've got potassium bicarbonate, and you also have sulfur as well. Now, some of those are also strong against scab too. So that's something also to think about, when we're sort of juggling sort of these in-between times, when we've had rain events that might be peppered with long stretches of dry events or dry days. So it's just something to be thinking about. The other thing I want to emphasize is that during this time of tight cluster, I highly recommend folks to hold off on the products that contain FRAC 7. So this is your, I'm drawing a blank now, Aprovia, Miravis, Lunaflex. That's a premix. We have other ones that Luna Tranquility, Excalia. Those are the ones I can think of off the top of my head. You want to save those products, those FRAC 7s, for the bloom petal fall period, because that's when those products, you're going to get the most bang for your buck out of the cost of those products, because they're great against scab. And they're also great against the Marsanina blotch or apple blotch during that time. But we'll revisit that later on. I'm just emphasizing to hold off on those FRAC 7s for right now. So take home messages is that if you're going to remember anything from this podcast for the disease update, number one, we have whatever scab infection events that have occurred this week, you've been okay as of this week. This is the week of March 25th, 26th. You were okay with your copper applications. Going into the following week, I highly recommend that folks get in something else because stuff is washed off. So make sure you get something else out there. As we're moving into tight cluster, it's probably the latter half of next week is going to be dry, depending on how warm it is and how fast things. You've got to be thinking about powdery mildew at tight cluster. And so I think those are the things I covered. Dawn, any thoughts? You're usually good at picking up things that I miss or I don't explain well.
No, I think that sounds really good.
And I just want to emphasize wedding events, not wedding as in holy matrimony events.
Yeah.
Wedding events caused by rain.
That's good. That's a good one. No, I think that covered pretty much everything that's come up with me in the past couple days that I've talked to
Okay.
folks about. So
All right.
thanks, Kari.
Yep.
Greg, I think that means it's your turn.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back this year. I appreciate this. I wanna cover a few things that I think are important at the moment, and then we'll go into a little bit longer term. So the first thing first, chlorpyrifos. We talk about it during the winter. Chlorpyrifos is legal for being used again. I'm not gonna go into the history, what happened. The product was removed, then the product was reinstated. The food tolerances for products containing chlorpyrifos were reinstated. In the meantime, a number of companies remove the label, cancel the label. However, few companies did not cancel the label. And as it turned out, late last year, chlorpyrifos right now, products containing chlorpyrifos that still have valid labels, which means they were not canceled, is legal for use according to the label. And this is very important that only the products that still have a valid label. The products that do have a valid label on fruit are Pilot 4E, which is from company Garda. From Drexel, we have Lambda-Phos and chlorpyrifos 4EAG. Those two still have the labels. Loveland has a product named Warhawk. And then, very recent development, there is also a product from Adama named Vulcan. Those are the chlorpyrifos products that have the label that includes fruit and are legal for use on fruit. So let's recall it. Pilot 4E, chlorpyrifos 4EAG, Lambda-Phos, Warhawk, and Vulcan. Those are the legal products to use on fruit. There are also other chlorpyrifos containing products, like formulation of 15G, or there is a formulation that has chlorpyrifos and bifenthrin, and those are legal for use, but they don't have fruit label. So if you decide that you're gonna use chlorpyrifos, make sure that you're using one with the label that is legal. Why it is important? Well, the first thing is the label is the law. If label doesn't exist, then the product doesn't exist. And again, number of companies, and the list is much longer than the list of products that are legal, were canceled, and they can no longer be on the market. You cannot use them, you cannot buy them or anything like this. Another thing is that when we say legal might not apply to every state. whatever regulations are within the state, that state Department of Agriculture or whoever is regulating the pesticide use, actually, if the chlorpyrifos is removed by the state, then this one actually proceeds the EPA. So growers from the states that have the chlorpyrifos removed by the state cannot use chlorpyrifos at all. And this is very important. Another thing to remember when you decide to use chlorpyrifos is this MRL, maximum residue limit. If you think that your products might potentially go on the market outside of the United States, a lot of countries have limits of MRL, and using chlorpyrifos might not be legal in the way that your fruit will not be able to enter that market. This is very important to remember. Those are restrictions that are in place independent from what EPA say about legality of using the product. And another thing is that also, and I have a conversation with growers here in Adams County, some of our packing houses will not buy fruit treated with Lorsban because their buyers have their own list of products that includes chlorpyrifos containing products as being a restricted product. So this is something to remember before you decide that you're gonna use chlorpyrifos. The state restriction, the MRL, and then who you're gonna sell your fruit. And if using chlorpyrifos will not actually impact what else is going on. So saying this, we know that product is legal, we know it can be used. If you need to use, the time to use it is right now. And right now, everything depends because the products are registered for the dormant application. And dormant does not mean before bloom. Dormant is dormant, and half-inch green is not dormant. So please remember about it. If you need to use and you think it's worth it, the best use will be on all the young orchards, all the young trees that being planted recently, because the older trees can actually survive without Lorsban, without a big problem, because they have strong enough trunk, big enough trunk. The biggest damage that you might experience will be on the young trees. So that's all about chlorpyrifos. Unless someone has a question, Don on Kari, I can move.
No, that sounds good. I was gonna ask you to bring up the within state, but you had already covered that. So
okay. Okay.
Oh, thanks.
So
Rick.
those are the most important things about the Lorsban, and I'm talking about it first because the forecast right now is that, well, we do see some green tips on the fruit, on the trees, some green foliage on the apples. Kari talked already about scab. So, it's something that if you're gonna use it, the decision has to be made right now and then go with it. The forecast, as much as we can believe what forecast says, is calling for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, rain, not showers, not period of showers, just simply rain for 3 days going. So, you don't want to spray when it's raining. So you might have a very short window when chlorpyrifos containing products might be used. Remember about it. So let's move to other, I think, important things right now. There are two pests that people are asking about at the moment. One of them are rose apple aphids. And there is this trend, it seems like there is a trend that people think, oh, I can use Belief because it's safe for the bees, so we should spray Belief before bloom. It is a legal application. Yes, it will help. I'm not sure if it's necessarily needed in every orchard. Rosy apple aphids are very tricky to predict if they will or will not affect your crop. Belief will not really control anything else other than rosy apple aphids. And rosy apple aphids with availability of belief or other products at petal fall can also be controlled at petal fall. I mean, I said this many times that personally, I think there is no need for any insecticide application before the bloom. I'm talking about synthetic insecticides, because all the pests that we're trying to control can also be controlled after the bloom. So with saying this, it's legal to use belief. It will be effective against rosy apple aphids. But the question I would ask, how important is rosy apple aphids in your orchard? And do you really want to spray extra insecticide if you don't know if the pest will actually be there? And then using the same products or similar products after the petal fall, you also can control rosy apple aphid. Another thing that actually need to be controlled very soon is white peach scale. While rosy is the apple pest, white peach scale is only peach and nectarine pest. So you don't need to control white peach scale on apples. Last year, we did a trial utilizing two different products, Esteem and Senstar, and we also look at horticultural oils. And based on last year data we generate, it looks that using any one of those three products, I'm talking Esteem, Senstar, or horticultural oil, at petal fall on peaches. This is important, not on apples, on peaches. And last year we did our treatment on April 12th. I think this year it will be, well, probably end of next week. This was the time when we got a perfect control of white peach scale with those products. The good part is that white peach scale can again be controlled later on when the crawlers are present. And this will be the second generation crawlers, and this will be sometime in mid-May. So if you miss this timing or you are not ready to do this at this time, you can actually also control them again later in the season. The oil was complicated last year because we did not use oil only at petal fall on peaches, but we actually used oil at three different timings. It was a petal fall on peaches, petal fall on apples, and mid-May when the crawlers are present. And all three, but the treatment that we apply had all three applications. So we don't know which one actually worked. But based on the information that we had from Esteem and Senstar applications, I believe the important times for oils would be the petal fall on peaches, plus when crawlers are present, which will be sometime in May. Again, last year it was April 12th. This year, well, it's anyone's guess, but since we already have some of our peaches in bloom right now, then probably, end of next week will be the time to control white peach scale. Two other things. One is oriental fruit moth. Based on the weather forecast, and right now we're talking 70s during the week of April 7th, I really think oriental fruit moth will start flying during that week, sometime around, after the next Sunday, not Easter Sunday, but the following Sunday. Why it is important? If any one of you is planning to use NUA for information about the timing and so on, you're supposed to provide biofix to the NUA, not using the artificially established biofix by NUA. So it is important to have oriental fruit moth traps in the orchard ASAP. It's okay to get zeros, but it's very important that we actually know when biofix happen. It will benefit us for the rest of the season. So the traps that should be in the orchard already are oriental fruit moth. If you are interested, you can also have red banded, and we have flight of red banded for 3 weeks already. And also tentiform spotted leaf miner. Spotted tentiform leaf miner. It also will be in the traps if it's present in the orchard. Other traps like codling moth, tufted apple bud moth, lesser peach tree borer, they should be in the orchard sometime when the bloom on apples will happen. And when is this? I don't know. I don't know anyone can right now predict reliably about when will happen anything. Then oblique banded leaf roller should be in the orchard about 2 weeks after the bloom on apples. And again, if you're using NUA and you're trying to use their predictive models and the grid accumulation and so on, you should have your own biofix for each pest that you're trying to use NUA models. Because the biofix at Piglerville, at the FREC, might be completely different than the biofix of someone who is higher in the mountains, even around Biglerville, or farther north or down south. So having your own biofix is very important. So put the oriental fruit moth traps out now, and don't worry that you will get zeros. Zeros are the numbers, which are actually very good numbers. And the last thing I want to mention, it's a short one. If you're planning to use mating disruption, and you're planning to use mating disruption for oriental fruit moth and codling moth, it will be nice to have it out also before the flight of oriental fruit moth. Because remember, when moths are caught in the trap, it means that males are responding to the female pheromone. So if you don't have mating disruption, the males will find a female, and then mated female can lay eggs anytime. Placing mating disruption too late, it still will work for the rest of the season, but you might miss. And again, it depends on the weather how important this early period might be, but if you're planning to have mating disruption, within the next week, 2 weeks, the OFM should be out. Codling moth will be too early, but if they are in the same dispensers, like they are in Isomet CM OFM TT or the Sidetrack Miso OFM CM or Sidetrack OFM CM PP, those should be out at the oriental fruit moth timings, not codling moth timings. That's really all I had. I don't know if there are any questions or additional information that we need to cover.
No, I think that was really good, really comprehensive. Thanks as always, Greg.
I don't have a question for you, Greg, but when Greg was talking and mentioned peaches, I realized I didn't say anything about peaches with disease management. So again, still trying to get on the 2024 season train here. So peaches, right now we're various degrees of bloom on peaches. So when you have bloom, the threat really is brown rot blossom blight. So the fungus that causes brown rot can also blight your blossoms. So the question is, should we be worrying about brown rot blossom blight right now? And I think it's yes and no. For those of you who have struggled with brown rot in the past, it would probably behoove you to put on some kind of bloom spray before basically the 3-day rain event that's going to be occurring probably starting late Sunday, because I had time to look at the forecast. So it looks like from Sunday night through probably Wednesday morning, we're going to be seeing this sort of steady state of rain during this time. And the temps are going to be hovering, averaging in the 50s. And for brown rot blossom blight, when you have an average temperature of around 50, you need about like, 20 hours of leaf wetness, which we'll probably be getting that. So for those of you who have had issues in the past with brown rot, you probably want to get something on your blossoms, your open peach blossoms. What could that be? You can be conservative. You can be Captan sulfur at this time. You can apply as far as iprodione, which is also Rovrol. You can put on heavier duty chemicals like lunisensation or Maravon, but I would say hold off on those until conditions really favor, which probably will be in a week or so, as the temps warm up, and if we get rain events. So you can, as far as, be on the more conservative side, I think, with the broad spectrum fungicides. But if you've really struggled in the past, and there may be some people who have, we've had a couple dry summers, so brown rot hasn't exploded like I've seen it, say, in 2018, where we got beaucoup amounts of rain. But if you are in that category, you may want to consider something stronger like Flynn Extra, Maravon, lunisensation, even Topsin. Topsin still works in our area. Something, as far as adding something perhaps to that Captan or to that sulfur. So I will be sure the next time that we talk about, or next time we record a podcast, that I'll revisit this to see where things are at. Because we're in this the bizarro world here of, we had warm temps a few weeks ago, then it's dropped to more seasonable temps, and things are going to be a very protracted bud development, particularly with the bloom and with stone fruit. So just be mindful of that if you haven't put anything on your stone fruit trees yet, and if you've struggled with brown rot in the past. And if you didn't get all those mummified fruit off, because this is a real threat to instigating brown rot blossom blight, is if you have any mummified fruit that were left over in the trees from last season. Hopefully people have gotten rid of all of them, but in the event you haven't, that's also another reason to be putting something on your peach trees right now. That's it.
Nice. Very good. Greg, I saw that you want to add something about oil.
Yes, I have to make a not correction, but maybe addendum to what I said. Still, some pests can be controlled before the bloom. And the one that I think that might make sense to try to control are European red mites and maybe San Jose scale. And application of oil before the bloom will actually help manage those two pests later in the season. If you did not have a problem with mites, if you did not have a problem with scale, then oil might not be needed. But if you did, and you want to go into the new season with at least some reduction in both population of those two pests, then application of oil, horticultural oil will work here, dormant oil will work, will actually help you to lower the pressure. I still hold to the statement that everything can also be controlled later, but if you control mites and San Jose scale before the bloom, well, it will be easier later on. There will be other timing that we're going to talk about controlling mites and scale during the season, but oils are still recommended, and I think they provide a good initial treatment in almost all orchards, and this way will be pom and stone fruit orchards. Be careful about oil if you're planning for one reason or another to use Captan or sulfur in your orchards, because this might create a problem. But other than this, don't forget about oils if you think your orchard will benefit from it. So that's it. Thanks.
Nice. All right. Well, unless anyone has anything else, I think that was a pretty good episode for the start of next week / end of this week. So, yeah, thank you both as always for coming on, Greg. Good to have you on this season. I'm sure we'll have you on many, many, many more times.
Time you guys tell me, and I will be able to.
All right, cool.
We'll put up the bat signal for you.
Yeah.
Okay,
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. Thank you all for listening, and I'll get this done so everyone can get this in their ears. So, say goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye. Good luck.
Bye.